Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to look at how you can use a new technology called Generative AI to create virtual set extensions, especially useful if you are in a more confined space or have sort of clutter to the sides and you wanted to create something that could be interesting and well integrated into your environment, this is going to help you sort of navigate that space for how to do that. But before we get there, as usual, I invite everybody, please, if you want to leave comments and have us answer any questions you have on the show, just post them below. I will mention that there seems to be some change that has happened on Facebook that is stopping comments on our page from reaching vMix Social. So, we'll try to keep an eye out for those, but if you can, we'd suggest you post comments over on Facebook because we think that would probably be the safest way if you want to have comments. So the other thing is we would love to have you if you want to join us here live on air. We have a link in the show notes below here on the screen, and that would get you to somebody in the studio, and we'll get you here on air with us. So let's get started. So I want to sort of frame the general space that we're going to be working in. And what I wanted to start with is really showing what it is that we want to accomplish, sort of where you would start from and what the end result can look like. So what I have here is, this is just a video that we took out of Storyblocks to make an example of this. So this could be your typical person that would be streaming in a particular location, but there's other stuff around that, you don't want to have necessarily show up as part of your set. So what we wanted to be able to do was to go in and say, we could actually change this to look like this. So let me just get the video playing again. So you can see that what we've actually done is we've taken and created an artificial environment around the person. And not only does this let us sort of replace things that are visually on camera normally, but we could end up doing things that create a whole lot of space around that. So now you could end up doing things that could have camera moves and other things. So for example, let me sort of just cut over to this, which is zoom in. You could have something where the person is sort of sitting on screen all the time, and then you want to do something which is like a slide over, so you could put something up on the side. You have the ability to do all this now when you create these types of virtual set extensions. And that's what we're going to cover, how to do step by step, focusing first on generative AI and Photoshop, what this will actually let you do. Before we do that next piece, though, let me just go over and say hi to everybody in the comments. So we have Michael. Always great to see you here, Michael. Thanks for joining us at 8 p.m. on a Friday night. Great to see you. So always good to have you join us. And we have Blue Chili Productions. Thank you for joining us, Blue Chili. And we have Eric from California, and he's saying AI is everywhere. And that's actually a good point, because specifically what I don't want to do is overhype the AI. But what I would like to see come out of this is at least an appreciation for where it works well and where it still has room for improvement, and more specifically, where it may fit into the things that you're doing. So thank you for that. So let's see. So Michael, thanks. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty excited because we think it is timely, and especially now that it's in something like Photoshop, it becomes something that is more accessible to people. They don't necessarily have to go off into other, areas for tools they're not using now. So Marco, thank you. It's great to have you here. And we understand everybody's been busy, so that's never an issue here. Everybody in the community is welcome. Anytime they can join, it is greatly appreciated. So Vlad, thank you for joining us from Manila. Great to have you here. Okay, so to jump in, what I want to basically do is answer the question, what is generative AI, and give you an example of it, sort of abstract from building virtual sets or set extensions with it. So inside of Photoshop version 25. So it's in the latest version, or a beta if you've been working with that. They have something called generative fill, which basically lets you select an area of the screen and tell Photoshop what you'd like to have it put in there. So I'm going to give you an example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build sort of a field with a little lake on the side, mountains in the background, and sort of a old barn in the field. So this is going to start from scratch. And so, we'll go through all of this. So the way you would work with generative AI, if we're over here, I do is I select a piece of the screen. And if you see down here, it comes in and says, give me a generative fill. So it's going to generate this. And what's asking me to do is to come back and say, what do you want me to put in here? So what I'm going to say is I want to put in an open field with overcast sky. And so now that that's in there, I say generate. And it's going to go off, and it takes time. So, based on the complexity of what you asked for, it'll come back and, generate what is essentially, if you look over here, 3 separate possibilities. So this is the first one that it generated. This is the second one. And that's the third one. So I'm going to go with the second one here. So we can say, okay, now it gave me a field, but what I'd like to do is now I'd like to put mountains in the background. So what I can do now is let me go up and say, where do I want these mountains? I want the mountains sort of coming right about there. So just beyond the tree line here. And I'm going to go and say, I want distant mountains, overcast sky. So we'll keep it sort of the same. Oh, you spelled that wrong. Overcast sky. Okay, so now what this is going to do as we generate this is it's going to, again, give us multiple options, but it's going to create these as layers inside of Photoshop. So you still get to treat this with the same basic structure that Photoshop has. So this is, and you can see this is all now blended in to what was there already. And this isn't like taking photos. This is generating this based on sort of algorithmic understandings of what different things are. And so you can see we have that, we have this, and we have this. And I actually, the first one came out, I think is pretty nice. So now those were sort of big blocks, but you can actually do other small details. So if I want to, this will be sort of another example of how you can work with this. Let me go over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'd really like sort of a little lake over here on the corner. So you can see I'm just sort of highlighting that. Oh, let me add the rest of this over here. I didn't want to cut any of this out. So if I wanted to do this, what I can now say is, since the lake is going to be sort of a soft edge, I'm going to feather the area a bit. So we'll just keep a big fat feather there. And I'm going to say water with a muddy bank. So now what you can see is I'm actually taking these different elements that I want, and I'm just asking Photoshop to generate them for me where I'm asking for them to be. So you can see this now just took that whole area and it made that into sort of a marshy, rivery area. So that's a second one that it gives me, and it gives me a third one over here. I kind of like the third one because that I think goes nicely with the overall flow. And, again, you can just go and continue to put different layers on. But what you'll see here as I do this is these are independent layers. So if I look, that is the water that it put on, and it built this whole edge over here based on this layer. Oh, wrong one. This layer here that was beneath it. And so it merged those two layers. So when you take that off, you can see it's just took what was there and sort of figured out how to feather those together to make this work. So that is basically what generative AI is. you can select regions of a palette. It's basically a canvas. And then from there, you can go and tell Photoshop what you want. And it stores this. So now the other piece is when you store this, all of this information, all of these different variations, they're all stored there as part of the Photoshop file. So I could go back and work with things. But, and this is a very important but, if I were to go and change lower layers, I'd have to recreate the upper layers because it uses those lower layers to generate the upper layers. And this is part of the process of starting to work with AI-based tools. You have to sort of understand the model that they use within the tool to generate what you want. So hopefully, this is going to give you a good sense of this. And keep in mind that it doesn't have to be generated from scratch. You can be starting with something. And that's really what we're going to be doing in this next piece, because I think once you understand how this works, like so from this sort of layered view, you'll get an appreciation for what you can do coming out of the, a virtual set production world and what you'd want to do with that. So with this sort of as a backdrop and an intro to generative AI and generative fill in Photoshop, let me jump over to vMix and I'll start to show how you could apply this to a virtual set. So over here in vMix, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a video input, which will be this show example I have. So this is a video here of this woman sitting at a desk, and I can just sort of loop the video as it plays. And we're going to use this as our baseline for generating something around her for the virtual set. So what I did here would be a good first step. I'd go here and I'd say, let me get this image in, and then I'm going to just take the snapshot of it. And I'll call this our template image. So we'll use that there. So yeah, I'm going to replace it. So now if I switch over to Photoshop, so let me sort of do that next. And I'm going to open, let's see, the template image. This is the image I think we just made here. So, see, did I open it? Yeah, there we go. So now I have a still of this image. And what I want to do to start to generate things around this using generative fill is that I will take, and I probably prefer to use something like the polygon lasso tool. What I'll do is I'll go and say, I'm going to cut out the parts that I'm happy to have replaced here. So we want all of this out of there. We don't want any of the bookshelves. We don't want the pencil holder or any of that. So we'll sort of go up here and sort of cut down and there. So that should be a good cutout piece. And what I'm also going to do, and this is important, is I'm going to feather the edges, because when we cut this out, we're going to use it as an overlay on top of the video. And that feathered edge will make it blend very nicely and avoid that sort of hard cut lines that you'd see. So before I generate anything, what I'll do is I will modify and we'll feather. So we'll do a big fat feather so you can see now it's got like a nice smooth ring around where she is. And if I go to generative fill, I'm going to do something, we'll sort of say steampunk basement with stained glass windows. So now we've set this up, and I'm going to ask it to generate a set around this. So this will take whatever time it takes. So now this is basing it all on an existing image. This isn't letting it go from scratch to just build everything. I'm going in here now and saying, I have elements in here. I have lighting. I have shadows. I have colors. And what you'll notice is that it has taken and leveraged a lot of that in this image it generated. So this may not be an optimal image. So you have that there. You have this here. That's obviously way too cluttered. So I could use, say, let's sort of start with something like we had in the beginning here. Or if I don't like it, I can just go back and say, I want some more choices, and I can click generate again. And so it gives you 3 options at a time. And then when you click generate again, it will just go and give you 3 more. So you can try to find something that works for you. And this is something you have to understand. I think this is much better. That actually has the window on the side, and that actually shows, with where the illumination is on the face. It's not that cluttered. So I think this is definitely a good possibility. That's a bit too cluttered. And again, that's another good possibility. It has a little bit of depth behind it, but I think I'm just going to go with the first one. So what I've done here now is I've created a virtual set, and what you'll notice is if I take her out, let me remove this bottom, you now see I have a feathered edge around this. So if I go and I export this, we'll call this, let me sort of move this over here so you can see it. We'll export this. It's in our show, so I'll call it set extension. So now, if we switch over to vMix, once this is saved out, if I switch over to vMix, what I'm going to do now is in the second input, I'm going to add our an image, browse here, and we call this set extension. So we open this up and add this there. And now, if I have this image over here, all I would need to do is to take and in layers, add the set extension above it. And you can see now that this is the set, it's fully moving in it and everything else. So as you think of how this would work for you, you can think of it now very much in the context of how much space do I need? How much physical area am I going to occupy when I'm on camera? And then you have the ability to cut out everything else. But key to this is leaving enough inside that selected area that you want to replace that it can pull that out and say, okay, I know what I'm matching up against, because it's just really looking there to decide what to do. So because we had a lot of other information in that area, basically the whole existing set, he was able to pull a lot of information out and create what is a pretty clearly clean, matched overlay for this. So this is sort of the first piece. The next piece I want to jump into is going to show you how you can create the true set extension, sort of a bigger space for this video cutout to operate in. But before we get to that, let me jump over. We still have a few more comments over here that I would like to get to. So we have automation is dropping in and say hi. Thank you for joining us, automation. So Vlad's saying you didn't need Google search for a certain picture. You just ask AI to generate. And that's the case. And in the post show, I'm going to talk a bit about some of the downsides. And, they'll become clearer, I think, maybe as we do more for how you have to know what it's strong at, what it does well, and what it doesn't. But yeah, it can be very, very handy for that type of thing. So yeah, Michael's saying he doesn't trust the picture. He hasn't catch it by himself. So, I mean, that's true. You're going to find that things that you used to consider, die-hard proof may not be anymore. And Marco's agreeing. Yeah, that is true. You can create things that are going to be very realistic, and that's only going to get better. I mean, what we see here is that first level. And it does, yeah, I mean, to Michael's point, it does look like a real photo. And that is why it can be really powerful for something like a virtual set, which is effectively made up. So, when people go in, they don't expect that somebody's necessarily operating, in this case, in a large steampunk basement bunker kind of thing, but it gives you that ability to do something that has that photoreal dimension to it. So let's see. So it's useful for a live camera. Yeah. So yes, this is something where right now the performance isn't good enough on the processing side, even with GPUs, high-end GPUs, to do some of these things in true real time. But cutting people out is getting better and better. I mean, if you've used DaVinci Resolve, that's something that they've sort of baked in now, which does take a little more processing, but it's close to real time, where you could have somebody walking down a block and you could cut them out and separate them and put text behind them and move that text. So, things like that are really incredible. And yes, the AI blurring the background is sort of a primitive version of that. But like I said, this is just getting better from here, both in processing and in algorithms. So I think that's why I mentioned this is something I think would be great to have people start to look at now, because it will have an impact on some of the things you're able to do. So, okay. So, Multimedia Max, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And yeah, so Marco's saying, he definitely wants to play around with this stuff. And I think that's it. It really comes down to start to play with it, start to understand what it does well and what it doesn't do that well, and then figure out if there is a fit for it in some of the things you're doing. So, okay, so let me take this now to that next level where we'd like to do something that is going to basically be a much bigger set than I'm physically. And this basically just replaced the frame that I already have captured with my camera. But if I wanted to do something bigger, let's just take a look at how to do that. So let me jump back over to Photoshop here, and we'll sort of look at, this is what we had before. And so what I'm going to do here is let me just get rid of this layer. It's like it works just like regular Photoshop. So I'm going to get rid of this layer. And what I am going to do here, oh, sorry, I'm clicking on the wrong spot. Yes. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to size this up from a 1080 to a sort of UHD. So I'm going to say file image size or canvas size. Sorry. Edit canvas size. Oh, sorry, in the wrong one. Set canvas size here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the existing still frame down in the center, and I'm going to turn around and say, I actually want to do that's 3840 by 2160. So let me shrink this down so it fits on the screen and we can all see it. So now what I've done is I've created a larger canvas to work with to generate a bigger set. And if I go and do pretty much what I did last time, just start to, cut out all the pieces that I don't want. So start up here, go around, go down, go over, cut up here. And so we're doing very similar things to what we did last time, just with the larger space over here. And so just like last time, we're going to feather this. Image. Sorry. Modify. Oh, sorry. Just all over the place here. So we do the feathering here, and that will smooth this out. And then I'm going to do pretty much exactly what I did last time. I'm going to turn around and say, let's go here, and we will do a steampunk basement with stained glass Windows. And let me see, I think basement is not spelled with a W. So, okay, so we're going to ask it to generate this. And now we've given it a much bigger, so this is a 4K space, basically, a UHD space, to be more specific about it. So we're creating this larger space to work with. What this will let us do now is we have all of this extra space in here. And actually, I mean, just looking at this right off the bat, I think this is a really cool example. There's another one with sort of elements all in the back. And I think I'm just going to go with the first one. But you can see now this has created a broader environment. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm just going to cut this out. And I'm going to go and say, let's save this. We'll export this as... and we'll say, export this as, let's see, Steampunk Set 4K. This is one I used before, so I'll just replace that. So now, once I do that, then we're going to go back into vMix, and we'll cover a few key points in this. So now that I have that, let me get rid of the old set extension I had here. We'll just close this out. And we'll add an input of an image. Sorry. And we'll come here and we said, where is the... There we go. So this is what we just generated here. So if you recognize, that's what we just generated here. But now, because we are dealing with a couple of different things here where, you know, this is a 4K image that we're shrinking down, we're going to have to do a couple of things. So I'm going to do this with layers first. So I'm going to add another input here, and we're just going to do a color input with a transparent background. So that basically gives us just another input with layers. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and say, let's add the video of the lady to that first. And we're going to do exactly what we did on the other thing in Photoshop, where I have to take and reposition it. So I want to go and say, I want to make this half size, and I want to bring it sort of in the Y. We're going to go down and say, I'm going to bring it to the bottom of the screen. So this positions this the way the other video when we created the set extension was done. So we set this up. And now the next thing we're going to do is going to go to layers again, and we're going to take it and we're going to put the steampunk set over it. So now what we've done is we've created the full composite here. And if I sort of come here and cut to this, you can sort of see, let's see if we actually pull the video out directly. You can sort of look at what you get with this. So this is now a very reasonable set that we just generated here. You know, if you were doing a show where, you know, steampunk would be a cool thematic thing, you know, maybe it's a video game show or something, this could be, you know, a perfect set for something like that. But what you want to be able to do when you have a set that's this big, to really leverage it, is to be able to sort of zoom in, zoom out, move around. Now, here's the point. Let me switch back to vMix, and you'll see something. When I have these layers in place within vMix, one of the things you can't do is you can't easily do PTZ control, like virtual PTZ control, because if I connect, what it's going to do is it's going to be trying to zoom the original image here, which is a transparent image in the background. So it doesn't take this as an encapsulated whole and do anything with it. It's simply working with the original layer that was assigned to this input. The overlays all stay static. So this won't actually work for what we want to do. So what we have to do instead is convert this into a consolidated image. And we do that by adding a mix. So for the mix, what I'm going to do is say, I want to use the color output, which is my new set. And we're going to set this up to say show output only because that's all I'm interested in. And now, once I have this, I can go and take virtual PTZ, connect, and now I can start to do what I want with this new image. So the first thing you'd probably want to do is you want to do something that sort of does a zoom in and goes down. So that creates sort of a, maybe back it out a little bit. So that creates a, a nicer close shot, and we'll create an input at that position. Then we will probably do something that is even more zoomed in and sort of try to keep it down here. Let's zoom that out a little bit. So we have enough. Let's give a little more headroom. So that could be another one. And then what we may want to do is something for the over the shoulder type of shot that we were talking about before. So we may want to slide this over here so you could sort of say, yeah, that may be a good place, and we have enough space there. And we're going to create that as a another one. And, so this gives us, the ability to sort of move between a couple of these. And then we'll probably do something which is more zoomed out. So we're covering something sort of, let me zoom all the way out, and then we'll just do a straight zoom in from here and down. So this gives sort of a nicer wide shot if we want it. And so we're just going to add that and create another. So what we've done now is using the mix, we set up a set of presets that we can use to handle this. And so if I do a cut between these things just sort of, they jump really quickly. So let me keep this looping here so you can see it in motion. So what we have to go back and do for all of these presets, so we'll just jump back in here again, is you have the positioning speed. So if I come down and say, I really want this to be much slower, I want these to be smooth types of moves, by lowering that, you can then sort of jump around to say, let's see, we'll move to here. Now it has a bit more of a pushback. I don't really care much for the way the virtual PTZ works here because it doesn't have any sort of smooth motion. It doesn't necessarily do like horizontal motion and vertical motion together. It seems to sort of, it zooms in and out, and then it does the positioning adjustment. So it doesn't necessarily give you a smoothing, but I think if you use these things possibly between two different inputs, you could do clean cuts between them, where you could sort of sit there and go, okay, so I want to get this, let me get this other shot. So again, you can just sort of duplicate this and, do multiple cuts between these things. So you don't have to go with sort of these generalized, slow pans and stuff like that, and slow zooms, which to me don't look very realistic. But that's just, a general point. There are ways to work around that. But the key thing is when you build these layers and you're creating this type of composite, you need to push that through a mix if you want to use PTZ to reposition and reframe them. So something to keep in mind when doing this. So I'm told we have a caller, so this is actually a perfect time for this. So Marco, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, it's a bit of a bad line.
Oh, no worries. So how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Great show. Thanks very much once again. Very interesting. I just wanted to add a quick question with regards to the perspective. You see the way it's placed with the desk with a page on the edge of the desk. Is there a possibility to also use AI to extend something which would include like the page, for example, in a bigger area of the desk, so that you could set it more in the middle of the frame, so that it integrates it in? Obviously, it would adjust the perspective slightly, but if it was within reason. I haven't played around much with this, but it's very interesting. I think can be very handy for quite a few applications, but I just want to know the limitations,
So there are a number of limitations. So I mean, I'll start out. It tends to do things that are more organic as opposed to more, geometrical very well. So, you see lines tend to have a very soft curve and things like that. So, which is why I deliberately chose steampunk because it has more of those sort of flowy curves and circular things. But the way, if you wanted to do something like that, it will take iterations to try to get it to cut in what you want. But if you remember what I was doing with the field and the background and the, where I had the little lake on the side with the water, that would be the approach you take. You would do something with Photoshop where you could place it in the center, have it generate stuff around it, and then start cutting into the areas and say, in here, I want you to put a wooden desk face on. And then you might have to do that 3 or 4 times before you got something that says, yeah, that looks right. I could use that. So it has, there's a certain crapshoot aspect to it. It doesn't necessarily have the context that you're working in all the time. And so it's just generating more random assumptions about how you may want this to look. So I believe that's going to get better, but that would be the way to do it. You could probably do something around the paper. I mean, but you'd have to be very specific. So if I came and since you're here, we'll switch over. Oh, I can't really. I don't know if I can show the photo. Oh, yes. Okay, good. So if I go over to Photoshop here, and I'll just sort of take and work with what you were talking about here. So let's just say I'm going to move this a little more to the center here. And if I wanted to sort of put a desk face in this, if I came here and just sold it, like overlap a bit because you wanted to know what's there, I came back and said, add a wooden desk face. Yeah. So I have no clue what this is going to do. So we're just doing this in real time here to see. Yeah. But this is what it's like going to be like to a certain extent. You're going to try stuff and you're going to be like, this just isn't going to work. But other things you make it, but that actually that is not exactly half bad. So that would give you, that's an example of that. And what you can see is that it actually did extend the papers out in doing that.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's what I was wondering. I can see I'm going to lose a whole lot of time next week.
So
all those edits I've got booked are just going to go. I'm going to be playing around with this. I can see it.
No, but I think, like I said, it works really well with organic things like outdoors. Yeah. It tends to do a really, really believable job. If you work with this, it will take some patience probably. You have to define very specific areas, but it is something that's definitely doable. It's just going to be, the effort involved to do that. And ultimately it's Photoshop. So you could go in here and say, well, I like this, but maybe I like the way it did the desk in the front in this, but now I'm just going to cut this and replace it with something else because I want it, So that way you could turn around and say, yeah, I'll just cut out an image and put that in there, but I'm working with it doing the hard stuff because creating that desktop would probably have been painfully long to do to get it to be believably correct. So you use it for what it's good at, and for what it's not, just sort of drop it and just replace it. It's just Photoshop. But like I mentioned, the layers stacking matters because it's using the layers beneath it to generate that next layer. So if I went here later and changed something down here, things above it wouldn't blend naturally with it anymore because well, now the lighting is going to be different or the colors aren't going to be right or things like that. So it's still a little tedious. And you can't tell it to remember like what I did, but change this one thing. Like, I love this, but remove that. It generates something new every time. So you sort of try to be as, tolerant of, not getting exactly what you want, but it lets you keep all of them. So like all of the layers are still here. So, that's a different one, which has more of an open desk under it. And, this is more one that just sort of does a big extension, which actually looks ridiculous with the calculator and the computer keyboard and other random garbage that it just threw in there because it didn't know what else. It thought that was a desk. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the sort of stuff you can get with that.
Wow, that is so cool. That's really great. I'm going to be playing around a lot with this. I can see.
Well, good. I appreciate you calling in and enjoy that, because it's at the stage where playing around is gonna let you decide what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you. Take care.
Cheers. Bye bye.
All right then. So let's see. So I have a few more comments here, and I think one of them is Vlad just said, "Can you type Streaming Alchemy Studio just for fun?" Yeah, I have no clue what that would do, but why not? We'll just throw it in there and give it a shot. Streaming Alchemy Studio. This will probably be a confusing mess, but we will see. We'll see what it comes back with. So yeah, so there's a few things here. So yeah, I mean, all right. So it sort of has the alchemy thing in here. Doesn't know it's video production, so it just sort of puts something funky together. But this could be a great start point for ideas, for things you may want to do. So a lot of these things are there, but that's what you get from Streaming Alchemy Studio put in. But it probably, yeah, it gave us multiples. So we have that. We have other people. Yeah, so sometimes you can get some very weird stuff, especially around people, where you look and go, that isn't quite normal. but that's part of what you get with all this. So, clearly this gentleman here has multiple hands coming out this arm. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's the hand that he's missing on this arm, and the thumb looks like it may be on the wrong hand on that arm, but that's what you get with this stuff at this point. People is not a strong suit. So, but thanks. That was a fun exercise there. So let's see, who else do we have? So Bill, thank you. Yeah. Hopefully you find it useful, because I know everybody's doing different things, and so this may apply or it may not, but enjoy. Let's see, what else do we have here in the comments? How would you remove the light background between her body and the arm? So this is what becomes more difficult, and that's a good question, because we're not chroma keying. So if you're looking at the white background here, what that actually is. So let's jump into this so you can see. So over here, let's see if I stop this here. And let me see if I can. Let me just cut to this so you can see the original. This is actually the desk in here. So it isn't the chair in here behind the desk. So if you're looking, there'll be times where she leans over and that where you'll see the top of the desk, the top of the chair. Yeah, I can't really find a good shot of it here. But, basically this, what you're seeing, there we go. So see that is the chair that's in there already. So I'm not really cutting that out, because that is something that we asked it to keep, and it's using this whole sort of environment that we have cropped over here. So that's all part of what we have set up here. So that's something to keep in mind. It's going to keep all of that and try to extend off it. And unlike sort of a chroma key or a person replacement where it's cutting the person out, this is simply cutting that broader area out, and it's not dynamically processing the person as a cutout, because it's not quite there yet. But I think we will, and I think that's going to have a profound impact on virtual sets, where you're going to be able to just take and do a perfect real-time cutout of a person moving, and put that in any environment you want with foreground and background elements. So I think that's probably the quickest answer to that. It's not something that we can do in this one, and because it's not a chroma key, or not something that we're pulling out of of sort of an AI person extractor, that we don't have that. So that's what's going on there. So let's see. So we have a couple of others here. So will the merge transition work instead of cuts? So if I show you how this works, so let's just take and we'll sort of put this out there. No, stop the loop because it's the same video. So if I go and I put this in as sort of the merge to put it over there, because it's doing a virtual PTZ, the merge doesn't really work for this because it doesn't see it as different. What I could do, sort of to get what you're talking about is, I'm just trying to think. No, because what I'm doing is I'm changing the mix, so it's not going to know that it's the same element. So if I put a second mix in here with the same two elements, it's not going to know they're identical and do sort of that positional merge. It is possible if I wanted to do that the right thing would be to. So let's go and sort of do this for what you're specifically asking for. So what I would probably do then is, let me put this back to sort of the full zoom out. Is that this? I don't know where the full zoom is for this, but sort of let's just take this as our full color in here. If I wanted to, what I could do is I could take and sort of basically do a duplicate of this that I then. I'm trying to think. That's a really good question. If there is an easy way to make this merge, probably. So if I wanted to do this, okay. So here's how I would do that. We're in here now, and I'll do this in real time. So let me just close these out because we don't really need this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create. We'll create a blank input. We'll do like we did before with the transparent background. And I'm going to, as a layer in this, let me go to layers. I'm going to put color. So we'll put that there. And then what I can do, so he's set, I will create another input. Again, same basic thing, transparent background. In going to the layers here, I will go and I will put color, which is that. But what I will do is I will edit this now to sort of zoom in and drop down a bit there. So there. So that, don't want to take it off the screen. So that's what we'll do. And I will set that. Now, since these are two separate inputs, but with the same layer, positioned differently, let me sort of, we'll put that there. I will put this in here, and then I'll do a merge, and let's see what this would look like. So yes, so that gives you another way to do that, where you can do the merge by not putting it in the mix and just putting that in as a layer and sort of moving around. So another way to do that without leveraging the mix, but you'd have to sort of combine it into a single input and then use merge between them. But that would give you that. So you can also, with inside merge, if you do use APIs, you can specify the duration for that. So you could have different duration merges for like slow and versus faster, zooms and pans. So yes, you can do this with a merge. So, all right. So what other comments do we have? So it says, do I need a powerful GPU? I haven't actually benchmark this with different GPUs, but my assumption is a lot of this is being done with the tensor cores inside GPUs. So to do that sort of AI style processing. So my guess is the more powerful your GPU, the better the performance will be. I don't think it will make a difference in the end result. So it's not like it's as far as I could tell, scaling quality based on processing power. But that's something you could see. If it at some threshold it decides to do a poor job, so as not to go over, a minute or 2 minutes or whatever generating. So I don't know the details on that, but my general assumption is a better GPU is going to give you much faster performance. And I'm probably 95% confident is the actual result if you're benchmarking it. So let's see, what else do we have here? So Marco's saying he loves the way it matches the existing lighting. That is probably the biggest thing, because you could turn around and say, gee, I could just cut virtual sets and make that and sort of feather it. The fact that it takes and analyzes what is in that frame and decides how to create a match with things like lighting and shadow and other things is phenomenal. And I think that's the biggest thing why, as opposed to simply saying, I'm just going to look up some photos and create virtual sets. What I find is that if you do that, a lot of people would do this along hard edges, like over here, this sort of light behind me, over here, where I have the metal edge. That would be something where if I wanted to do a virtual set, I'd be looking for an edge like that I then go and say, I do the extensions to that set, against that, because it doesn't have that natural feathering look unless you spend a lot of time manually trying to make that work. This does it very, very quickly. And I agree. That's probably one of the strongest things it has in terms of quality. So, all right. So I think we're going to call this a wrap for today's main show. If you can, I would, love to have you stick around for the post-show hangout. If you can't, I definitely appreciate you watching today, and we will see you next Friday. For those that are staying, take care, and I'll see you in a minute. All right, welcome back, everybody. So I hope everybody enjoyed this. This is sort of a fun one because, unlike most shows, when I do shows, I tend to sort of like really prepare and script what I want to cover, and I have everything sort of preset ahead of time. This is a case where I had no clue what was going to happen when I started, like, to generate these different sets and that, because, like I said, each time you do it, it's just going to be different, whatever it picks up. So this is one of those shows where you sort of fly by faith. You go out there and say, gee, I hope this generates something useful for the show. But I think that's sort of an important point in leveraging these technologies. They have a lot. A long way to go to be sort of very general purpose tools. And if you remember, like with people, when I had that other example in the, let me sort of jump back. We can slide over to that so you could see the way it rendered people inside of Photoshop. This is just weird. I mean, this look at the eyes over here. If you sort of go in here and saying, that looks strange. But it is doing some stuff like refraction. So you can see it's like there's an intention here to try and get this right. But the human form and how the body interacts with different elements just is really not there. You may get certain things, but even if you just look at here, the eyes don't seem right. This face over here doesn't seem natural. It just looks like out of place, and so there are things that you'll get that are, when you ask it for things with people or things with more rigid geometry. Like even here with like flasks, you'd look at this and say, a flask has a very clear geometry, sort of. We know from Streaming Alchemy, the logo, where it's got a pole down and then sort of a triangular slant out to a curved bottom. That's a very consistent thing, but it just renders the glass elements in here with that organic feel. So it's going to be something where you'll figure out what works and what doesn't. But it was definitely a lot of fun, and like I said, that was a crapshoot. And Michael, thank you for joining us with this. I'm glad you found the topic useful, and Yeah, I think for all of us, it's going to be something that we just keep our eye on and see where things move forward. But the bottom line is they are moving forward, and what's built into things like Photoshop, there are other more dedicated apps, like Midjourney, which will probably do a better job with people and integrating them into environments. I mean, there's a fee associated with Midjourney. So, I wanted to do something where I thought that more people would have Photoshop potentially. So I wanted to do something that was more generalized there. But it's not just on image things. I mean, using things like ChatGPT, which, we've been talked to death and it's been hyped to death, but it is really good as a brainstorming partner to generate ideas. So say you're trying to do research, background research on a topic. It could actually produce a reasonable first script, for background, or at least give you the raw outline for elements if you're researching a topic. So there are lots of things that you can use as a start point to then apply your unique skill sets into that. So I think that's that's something to keep in mind. These are a broad set of tools and evolving very, very quickly. So we'll have to see. But right now, I think they really are going to be driven by our unique creativity and what we see wanting as an end goal. It's funny because I've talked to people about this. I said, in some ways, it's very much like working with an outside creative where you'll go to them and then you'll describe what you want. They'll come back with a couple of, here's 3 different approaches I was taking. And then, you'll go back and say what you liked in the different ones and get refinements based on that. It's not quite there. I mean, it's sort of like going back to that person saying, I don't like any of these, give me 3 more. You can't go and say, well, I like this from the first one and that from the second one. It doesn't have that sort of inherent ability to draw the context from everything it created and then make something new based on all of those together. So you don't quite have what you'd have with a real creative. But again, it's the sort of thing where it can give you a start point maybe to go to a creative and say, I got this, and these are 3 examples of things I really liked. Use these and, come back to me with something, that sort of integrates these elements. Because a lot of times, you get stuck for a start point. I don't even have a vision yet for what I want to do. And that may help, get you creatively thinking about different things that could work. So, Marco, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. So, and thank you for calling. I always enjoy that. So it was great talking with you. So what Michael is asking for is an idea for a future show. We keep it coming on, a product demo with interactions. Yeah, that's something I was thinking about. So one of the things that I thought might be a fun show to do later this season, because we've got a lot going on over the next month. It's pretty crazy here at Neural Net side of things, where with just the number of things we have to get out the door. But I think it might be nice to try to do some type of game show where I could have folks out there call in here. And we'll do it with multiple guests. We'd have to see infrastructure wise what we can support with the number of guests, but it might be fun to try to do something like that, which will show it off, but also let us have some direct engagement. So as opposed to being a pure product demo, basically do something that is more of a engagement show where we get to do something together. Maybe we'll do something around the Christmas, the holiday season, and see if we can do something there. That could be fun. But thank you, Michael. Yeah. So Vlad saying, I guess he was trying to match my beard, sort of. Yeah. I want you guys to tell me if my eyes ever start looking like that. Let me know, because I'm going to need to get some help with that. But yes, that may have been the intention. I don't know. Maybe it's spying on me through a webcam here. We certainly have enough cameras. So, all right then. So I think this is a fun show to do today. So I'm grateful that everybody hung around and that we got to try some stuff off the cuff. That's always fun. I don't do it enough, and it's good to just like work from scratch and sort of build these things together. But hopefully you enjoyed that too, because this was less prepared. This would basically be every step that I showed here was something we'd have to you'd have to do yourself to make it. So it sort of gives you the full rundown. So You the Man with is basically saying we'll explore the generative AI and with Camber. Yeah, so there are other tools, that are definitely integrating these. So it's going to be a fun few years, I think, on the technical front for what the tools we use are going to let us do. So I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, I'm glad saying this was fun. I agree, Vlad. I had a blast doing this. So thank you. Yeah, Michael, it was just a lot of fun doing this together. So, all right then, everybody. So we're going to call this a wrap for today. Thank you all for hanging out for the post show. That is always appreciated. And we are planning for a show next Friday, same time. And until then, thank you all. Be safe, be well, and I'll see you next week. Take care.